Okay, hi folks. It's that time of the month again, and I have another Visionary Realms legend with me today, Director of Communications and Producer, Ben Machail Dean. Say good day, Ben.
Hello, everybody. I feel like you kind of lifted me a little high on that legendary. I don't know. I think, I don't know if I can live up to that, but let's give it a shot.
Everyone gets that status, mate. You're all worthy.
Nice.
All right, so today... So topic is general Pantheon and a related Q&A at the end. So we've got a special guest today. A wild Joppa has appeared. He's going to be absent and just doing a few things for the first kind of part of it, but he'll jump in to answer a few questions as we go. We'll try and stick to the hour, but we'll see how we go time-wise. We may run a little bit over. We've got a lot of questions to get through, most of which we'll answer, some of which we will try to give some information on, and there'll be a few that we can't answer, which I'll probably just skip by, so just to save you from hearing that we can't talk about it. If you don't hear your question called out, then you know that's why, and we'll try to get to that at a later date. Any questions on alpha or beta or things like that won't be answered. We don't have dates for anything like that, but we are focused just on pre-alpha. And we need to be careful what we say because although we're talking to you guys, this will be released live in a week to everyone else. So with the NDA in place, we just need to be a little careful. And I'll just be one sec because I logged myself out of the forums accidentally.
I thought it was the NDA. We've gone silent. We're under NDA now. And now listen to an hour of us breathing.
I used my push to talk as my mouse button on the side, and I've got two, and I accidentally hit the back button as I was talking, and it unlogged me out. I was like, oh god. I've got a band-aid on my thumb from cutting it, so I can't feel where the button is.
Why are you cutting your thumb? Is this something I should be concerned about?
No. Slicing vegetables and wasn't paying attention. Okay, so here we go. All right, first question. So it's a big one, and it's going to give away the title because the person here is a fan site owner. So Pantheon Plus. Ooh. Hello, Minus.
Yay!
Hey, Minus. At Pantheon Plus, we've been talking a lot about artifacts due to our dig into the atmosphere and climate systems. I was curious if you could give us an idea if we'll see a lot of varied artifacts across Terminus and how difficult we can expect these to acquire.
I love that we're opening up with this because, frankly, as we're getting into pre-alpha 5, we're not doing a huge focus on artifacts. So it's hard to, at least for me, to talk too much in depth about artifacts. I know that Joppa has mentioned them in the past, but this question isn't really one that I'm going to be able to go in depth on.
Yeah, that's cool, man.
Sorry, man.
All right, so... Oh, wow.
Yeah, I know. Great start, eh?
Yeah, but also
shot right out of the air.
The follow-up, the first line of the second question, without revealing too much about progeny. So I know right now.
Progeny's going to be the same thing.
Yeah.
In fact, progeny even more so because that still hasn't been prototyped. So there's even less we can say about that right now.
Yeah, that'd be further down the track. So funding update.
The question isn't about. The question isn't about details. Okay, so maybe.
So I know right now a lot of the system that is being kept under wraps. Can you tell us if this system as a whole is a system you feel is needed for launch, or if we feel the system will be better suited as post-launch?
Oh. Yeah, sorry, I wasn't even reading the question. I just heard progeny and I clammed up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's something that we want for launch, absolutely. Will it get in there for launch? I can't say specifically. The way that we break things up right now, as you know, with Project Fairtale and pre-alpha, we have certain systems, the key systems that we call them. We make sure that those are in place as we move into, and then everything else is slotted into a different phase. So some things are slotted into alpha, a few things are in beta. Last roadmap update that we did, progeny wasn't until beta and even late beta. So that's kind of one of the things that may not get to launch depending on where our timeline ends up. I'm not saying it's not going to be there. I'm just saying right now it's not super high on the must include list. So hopefully we'll have it for launch, but I can't tell you for sure yet.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so let's move on. We got, what is your favorite thing about being part of the development of Pantheon?
Oh, goodness. You know, when I first heard about the project, I'm gonna wax on a little bit here and just sort of tell a little story. So prior to this project kicking off, I was working at 10 Ton Hammer. I'd been an executive editor there, and then I worked in marketing and PR there for a while. And so I sort of knew Brad a little bit, but I'd also created several, just out of my own hobbies. I created several community sites for various games. I had one for the first time lock progression server, fippydarkpaw.com, if anybody remembers that. I created that, and that community did well. There's a couple of other games I did stuff like that for. So anyway, I had always wanted, like you guys, to have kind of a restoration of an EQ-like game. And so I was putting together another community site just on my own time, and I forget what the domain name was. I think it was classicmmo.com. And I just started working on that, and I had some big plans for it. I knew people in the industry, and I knew that if we could get a big enough community interested in this and posting regularly and showing how big we were and how much we wanted this game, somebody would pick up on it. So, oh look, somebody took that domain. Look at that. It says something else now. Number one classic. Number
Gold
one.
Blues
Wow,
power
classic
leveling.
That's hilarious. Well, that domain was mine at one point. No longer. But so I had reached out to. I started thinking, I'm like, who would make a game like this? And then I thought, of course, Brad McQuaid. So I reached out to Brad on Twitter, and then I realized that he was actually already planning on something like this. So the timing just kind of worked out. So I reached out to him and I said, dude, I have to be a part of this project. This was prior to the Kickstarter and everything. So this would have been September-ish of 2013, somewhere around there. So he got back in touch with me and we started talking. Back then it was called, just as a placeholder, it was called MOG, M-O-G, McQuaid Online Games. And then, of course, we had a bunch of people that had come in from back then. I think it was still SOE, yeah. We had Celine Grant and a bunch of other guys, Corey, and a few other names that you guys would recognize. And so we started. We got started on the project, and we wanted to do a Kickstarter for it. Now, none of us had done a Kickstarter before. And so it was a little bit, I say that generously, it was a big learning curve for us all. But we did it. We put the Kickstarter up and we learned a lot. We didn't do things, exactly the right way, the way that we should have done it. But, hindsight's 20/20. But we did prove one thing, and that was there was a big enough crowd that wanted this game. So going back to the original question, what is your favorite part about working on this game? It's just seeing that. It's just having that validation that there's such a big crowd that has been wanting this type of game, and even better, being able to be a part of it has been incredible. It's something that I always wanted to see, and the fact that I actually get to be a part of it, I think that in and of itself is my favorite part of working on this game.
Yeah, nice, man. Good answer. I think mine is the team, like just working part of the team. We're all gamers, we're all passionate, everyone, works within their own department, incredibly well, and we all work together so well. And I just seeing the camaraderie and the support that we give each other.
It's crazy, man. Like just ever since that first day that we started working on it, and when we put the Kickstarter up, just seeing the flood of support, seeing all of you guys coming out and supporting us, and devs coming out of the woodwork saying, "I got to work on this game," and people just throwing their resumes left, right, and center at us, saying, "I got to be a part. How can I help?" Just offering their time, offering their services. It's such a huge community feel to it. It's incredible. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's amazing. What's your least favorite part about being part of the development team?
That's pretty easy, actually. It's Kilsin. No, the least favorite part is just the way that things are working. We have, I hate to say this, but we are a largely remote team, and we've always been that way. Just because we keep things lean and mean, doesn't mean we can't get things done. It just means that we don't get to see each other very often. So every once in a while, like we have a core in California, and a few of us get to see each other here and there on occasion. But it's not a day-to-day thing. Like we can't go out after work and have a beer together because we're just not all local. So I think that part kind of sucks sometimes. But
yeah, I agree. Not having that face-to-face or being able to pop your head in someone's office or go out for lunch or something like that.
Yeah, it's so different when you can work side by side with somebody. Just go tap them on the shoulder and peek over at their monitor and see what they're doing.
Yeah,
it's different, but
that and having a group with Ronick and all of the courses is pretty bad.
I enjoy that because it makes me look good.
All right. So how many beans do you own? And I think we can both say that
beans do I own?
we own like unlimited amount of beans.
I don't. I'm gonna get semantics on this. I don't think we own the beans at all. We guard the beans, but they're not ours.
Yeah, that's it. We don't have possession over them. We just control the flow. All right, so here, a fun one. Ben, have you been a victim of Mmorpgs glitter bomb packages? I don't.
Oh, not exactly. Not exactly.
I've seen the meme. I've seen the actual video of the real life glitter bomb ones. I didn't know Mmorpgs did them, but
he's never done it to me, and it's unfortunate. He had some good opportunities. I'm just gonna tell another. Medi, if I'm speaking out of line, if this is giving too much personal information, it'll be too late by the time you stop me. But just thinking years back, I was in LA for E3. And I had known Medi for some time. We were gamers together for quite some time, and we worked together at Ton Hammer as well. And I'm Canadian, as he will point out. And E3 had ended, and I was about to fly home, and I was getting ready. I was all packed up, and I could not find my passport. So I was looking everywhere, trying to find my passport. It was gone. It was gone. I don't know what happened to it, but I lost my passport. And it's not easy to get back into your country if you don't have a passport. So I had to go to the Canadian consulate in San Francisco. And so here I am stuck at E3 in LA, and it was like Friday, and I had to get to the consulate, which wasn't going to be open until Monday. So I'm like, I don't want to stay in LA for a weekend paying $7,000 a night for a hotel. I'm exaggerating, obviously, but it's expensive. So I sheepishly call up Medi, and he's like, dude, come on over here. So I went over to his place, and we had a good weekend together. It was fun. He was very generous, very hospitable, and his family was very, very kind to me. And there were no glitter bombs, but they were very, very kind to me. So.
Yeah, Medi's a good
guy. Was it Tuesday? Yeah. Yeah, he says they weren't open until Tuesday. Yeah, that was it.
Okay, so, all right. What kind of opportunities will be available for streaming in and around the PA5 lifecycle? Will it be more open?
Yes.
Great answer. Sounded like a question mark at the end of that. Yes.
Well, yes. Yeah, I'll be frank. Absolutely, we do want to open it up more. I'm going to be dead honest with you. I have to figure out what that means. If we have to do like special streaming NDAs, something like that. We still have to control it to a certain degree. We can't have a free-for-all ad hoc, stream what you will, in pre-alpha, because without the context, like some of you guys were saying that even with last night's stream, without the context of what's actually going on in development, it could just be viewed in a unfavorable way, I guess.
Yeah.
Like people who don't follow the game won't know what's going on, and we just need to make sure that we have some regulations in place. So I have to kind of think about what that would look like. We have done a similar thing in the past. Like I know that we had a few of the community guys streaming independently. I think it was around PA4, around that time anyway. So we might do more of that. Anyway, it won't be a free for all, but we'll figure out a way that we can get some of you guys streaming for sure.
Yeah, cool. And maybe if Joppa's around for this one as well, he might want to jump in. This may have been touched on before, as I haven't consumed all things Pantheon, but what are your thoughts on player shops? He particularly liked how it was done in Aeon, simple and effective. Do we have anything regarding player shops or anything like that? Player-owned things?
Not currently. Not currently. Not in game right now, no.
Okay, cool.
That's true. That's true.
All right, so can you give us more details on harvesting and crafting systems? Will these be tested in PA5?
It won't be in Shakeout.
Yeah, okay.
That's about as far as I can go with that.
Yeah, definitely not Shakeout, and a pretty good chance we won't see at least crafting. We may see a little bit of harvesting come online during PA5, but definitely a post PA5 thing as far as getting that up, and it's something that we would want to have in place for alpha, at least the beginnings of those systems for sure, but more of an alpha thing.
Cool. And just as Vendra just said too, like this a shake, like the PA5 shakeout is not the real PA5. So this is just a shakeout event for us, a short 2-day event to help us shake things out and get set up for more people. So just want to make that very clear.
Yeah, and there's good reason behind it, as you guys have been patiently waiting, and we occasionally get reminded. It's been about a year and a half since PA4, so that's why we need a shakeout. We need to, like, everything has changed. I shouldn't say everything, but the game has undergone some serious work, and while we can do a lot of internal testing and load testing and stuff like that, we need to make sure that everything's still going to work with live actual players, and that's what Shakeout's all about. Yeah, shaking out the cobwebs and dirt. That's exactly it.
Yeah, exactly. Will items be on a tiered system, and if so, will this be shown somehow?
No, we're not going to do tiering. If you're asking about like colors or item levels, no.
Okay, cool. What mechanics will players have available to sell their wares?
I love that. I love that phrase, by the way, selling the wares.
Yeah.
Is it with a Z?
Yeah.
Wares? Like
combats.
Theirs isn't, but I like to think of it that way with a Z.
Yeah. I mean, selling. I think tonight we just want to kind of stay focused on like pre-alpha 5 context, and so for pre-alpha 5 context, you can expect, to have when we get especially into PA5 proper, the interaction with vendors and pretty standard fare there, but an opportunity for us to see the economy really come online as players are able to loot, work out trades and sell things to other players, of course, but then also have that consistent vendor influx of currency through selling the things that they find in the game.
Yeah, perfect. Will there be a mail system in Terminus?
A what system?
A mail.
I thought you said a mouse system. I'm like, yeah, you'll be using your mouse. Presumably.
That is something we have the infrastructure in place for, and it's just not really on the front burner right now.
So does Visionary Realms have a plan for onboarding players unfamiliar with MMORPGs? Or will it be more of a read the manual and jump into the game approach?
I'm going to step on this a little bit. When you get in to PA5 Shakeout, you're going to see sort of the beginning of our onboarding, and you're going to see that it very much right now we don't say right click to interact. We don't do that kind of stuff. However, we are putting together a guide for that, so there is going to be a textual guide that people can read, but the onboarding in game is pretty good.
Yeah, nice. So not going to handhold, but there'll be some general tips and stuff like that, just so you're not sitting there scratching your head, getting frustrated and not know what to do if you're a brand new player.
Yeah, and Mike Butler, Artois is actually writing up the new player guide as well. So I can't imagine that anybody in this group has never played an MMO before, but maybe. But that being the case, once we launch, obviously there will be people who haven't. And anyway, yeah, that will be covered in either a manual or in game or both.
Was that your French coming through there, Ben? The Artois?
Oh yeah. Well, how do you pronounce it?
I've always said Artois.
That's the Aussie pronunciation. Artois.
Artois. But I've never thought of Artois. That's, yeah, I guess that works.
Monsieur Artois.
Yeah, well, yep.
Yes, Stella Artois. Yeah.
There it is. We talked about in the stream too, right? The orientation versus hand holding, and Mmorpgs brought up a great point that, you know, something like climbing in Pantheon is climbing's not new, but how have we done it in Pantheon? What does it feel like? That's a great example of orientation. When you see a pop-up like that says, by the way, to climb, simply do this and pay attention, because climbing takes endurance, and if you run out of endurance, you fall, and that's it. There's no now. You know, here's a climbing pick, and we want you to go to this flashing rock over here and try to climb. And if you fall, an NPC will be here to catch you so you don't die. That's hand holding. Orientation is, here's how you climb in Pantheon. Good luck.
Yeah, that's it. So people who already know or don't care, want to fight it themselves, can skip it. Other people can read the information and do what they like with it.
Yep. To your own peril. Yes.
Exactly. All right, so a quick fire question for both of you. What is currently your favorite zone in Terminus, and why?
Oh, I don't want to give the obvious answer, but
I'm gonna let you go first.
No, I was gonna say, I'll let you go first. Oh goodness. You know, I don't want to say it because it's going to be obvious, but I mean, Fairthale has a lot going for it. There's a lot going for it. I'm trying to say this without actually telling you what's in it, but there's lots to explore. There's lots of different sort of biomes, if you'd call them that. I don't think that's really kind of the correct use of that. It's not like you're going into a fire region and a winter region in Fairthale, but there's just a lot of environment and exploration and caves and things to climb and things to discover. So that's a lot of zones are like that actually, but I do have a fondness for Fairthale right now.
Nice.
Yeah.
What about you, Chris?
Makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah, it is. It's really tough. I'd have to say right now, it's really going to be a toss-up between a few. The Black Rose Keep is one of them. The way, and even though, you know, we've shown some of it, and then there was that video that shall not be named.
Dude, now everybody's going to be looking for it.
I don't know. What are you talking about? But it regardless, until you stand in the zone and see it, it's hard to understand, like, just how amazing that the layout, the terrain, there's just so much that could be said about it. But honestly, Avendir's Pass, with the state that Avendir's Pass is in right now, I could also say the same for Silent Plains, because of so many of the departures from kind of the typical fantasy, I don't want to say trope, but, you know, certainly Thronefast and Avendir's Pass have kind of that very, you know, well-worn, familiar, high fantasy, you know, kind of feel. And Fairthale is amazing, you know, and I think it does a lot of unique things in light of like an elven forest motif, and it breaks away, you know, from that quite a bit. But Silent Plains is it has so much strangeness and interestingness that it's really kind of captured my imagination quite a bit as well.
Yeah, shout out to Silent Plains. That's one of my favorites as well. But the others you mentioned, and Fairthale, just because of the ginormity of what we're doing in that zone, is up there with my favorites too.
It's also, that, I mean, like I said, I didn't want to be obvious in that choice, but I guess there's sort of a special place in all of our hearts for it too, because that's really where we started taking off. Like we started, you know, doing things with the gray boxing and building it out the proper way, or the way that we needed to do it. And it just grew on you. So it's always going to be an old favorite.
Yep.
But yeah, all these other zones too. Just the variety alone is incredible. That's one thing that I always say when people ask me about the kinds of games I play and the kinds of games I like. I didn't like Bioshock, and I'll tell you why. Because Bioshock, to me, it was all done in the same environment, which made sense. I mean, what was the name of the city in there? You know what I'm talking about. Somebody's going to say it in chat here. Rapture, yeah. But it all felt the same to me. And while the story was good and there's certainly excitement, I like things with lots of varied environment. Uncharted 3 was one of my favorites because there's so much variety. And a lot of people didn't like Uncharted 3, but I liked it because you're going all over the world, all sorts of different environments. It's why I like the James Bond movies too. Every movie is in a different environment. I just like that kind of variety, and we have it all. We have all sorts of different varieties. So I think the game as a whole is kind of my favorite. Kind of cheesy to say, but
yeah. All right. Good answer though. So what are some of the areas where the team's thinking has been refined over the last few years, or where their initial assumptions were challenged? Are there any examples we can share of places where tester and supporter feedback has really helped the team as they've worked on building out systems and content?
That's a really good question. I'm going to hand that one to Chris. That's a really good question, though.
That's a really good palm off too, bro.
Can you read it one more time?
So what are some of the areas where the team's thinking has been refined over the last few years, or where their initial assumptions were challenged? And are there any examples we can share of places where tester and supporter feedback has really helped us as we worked on building out systems and content?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, one of the most recent ones we've actually discussed and shown is in the size of the world, scope of the world. I remember, and Ben, you were actually a part of this conversation. I believe at some point there were 2 or 3 really big kind of epicenter conversations when we were first working on Fair Tale, and we were somewhat fresh out of PA4, and in Pre-Alpha 4, Thrown Fast, Avenger's Pass, those 2 zones were a big part of the content and available content. And there's a lot of consistent, feedback about the size, the scale of those zones, and that it just felt a little off, because as big as the zones were, if you looked at the map in Unity, a 2K map is a pretty sizable map, but the amount of things that had been kind of put into these zones, content-wise, POIs, whatnot, it left our players with a sense of that there's just not enough space, there's not enough room. That's kind of that sense of arrival we talked about on the Black Rose Keep revamp stream. And so that's been a big part of it. And I remember when we were first getting into Fair Tale, we had a first pass on the Fair Tale zone, and then we were kind of all left with that same feeling, and we actually went and used Greater Fate Art in EverQuest as a reference point to say, you go back to EverQuest, and the zones really were not that large. I mean, there were a few that were a few, but in reality, there weren't a lot of really, really big ones. And even like something like the Karanas were, broken up into smaller zones. And so if you just ran like I did, when you zoned into West Karana, you just run, straight all the way to the water and then run left all the way to the zone line. Like, they didn't feel all that huge as long as you were sticking to the edges. And but what made EQ feel big, and again, I'm making a distinction between moving through these zones on foot as a player versus like the actual size of them, is the negative space that existed. And as we were thinking about Fair Tale, and we were thinking about places like Oldwood specifically, we looked to things like Greater Fate Arc as an inspiration, because here's a relatively small box zone, and yet you feel almost like you get lost in there, because number one, what they're doing with the atmospherics, how much view distance do I actually have before that curtain of fog is kind of cutting things off. but also just how much in there is just trees and just ground that you have to cover. And in order to create negative space like that, you have to really build that fundamentally into the design of the zones and layout of the zones. So there was a lot of wisdom we gained in kind of breaking through that initial door into Fairthale, into Oldwood, that now, as we've gone and started doing these revisits on Thronefast and these other zones like we showed last night, we've been taking a lot of that wisdom into that, a lot of that perspective. And I know for sure that our testers will feel almost immediately upon getting in game that this is a very much different approach to world layout, and it's going to feel a lot better.
And it's quite a balancing act too. Like if we think back to Vanguard, it was huge. It was huge, and seamless chunks. Well, if you call them seamless, for better or worse, they were chunks. But a lot of them were just, they didn't have anything in them. Like they had terrain, they had the world around them, but they didn't have content. And I think that's sort of the balancing act, is when you find just the right amount of content to fit the area that it's going in, so that it doesn't feel empty, but it still feels vast. It's tricky, but I think it's working.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, and that's the great thing about things like the perception system and the kind of the climates and the atmospheres and the climbing. All these different systems working together to create, in those negative spaces, to still create a sense of like, there could still be something to discover here. There could still be something, even though I don't see a landmark or a POI or, a pack of NPCs. There's still that sense of what might I find. So yeah, really excited.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice. Good answer.
Yeah. Sorry, I have to lean into this color contrast is terrible in our channel, by the way. Spoff says comparing lands that are built around per square foot. I don't even remember when it was, but I was talking to Scott Hartzman, who was CEO of Tryon Worlds just before they were building Rift, and he made kind of the same comparison. He's like, back then they were kind of going that way as well. They were, and he said something very similar. He said that they didn't want to make big spaces just for the sake of making them big. He says it was really the content that they were going for. So square footage, it certainly has something to say for it, but yeah, as long as you've got that square footage worth exploring, that's what makes it feel big.
Yeah, nice. That was great questions, you guys. Great answers.
Yeah, fantastic question.
So if you were to think forward to a year after launch, what would you like? What would that look like in terms of the game experience that players were having, as well as what the dev team is working on? Any teasers about stuff that the team can't do at launch but would really like to do after launch? That's a tough one.
It is, because as any game development goes, when you, and let's say any creative project, and perhaps any project in general, when you sit down and you start planning it out, you have all sorts of ideas. There's no shortage of ideas, but then you come to the realization, we can't possibly do all of this in a reasonable amount of time. So I think that a lot of those ideas that we had earlier on that we've probably had to cut along the way, and maybe some stuff that we still want to do, like we talked about it earlier tonight, maybe things like the progeny system won't be able to make it in for launch, and maybe that's the kind of thing that we pick up after launch. The game certainly is not going to stop at launch. Launch is just going to be kind of the start of when the public at large can start experiencing the world, but it certainly doesn't stop there. We're going to still be going full bore. We might take a week or so to celebrate the launch, but after that, we're still going. We're going to still be at it. Yeah, maybe a half week.
Yeah.
There's also the lore side of things too, which is really exciting. Where what Ben's saying exactly right. You have the system side, the gameplay side, and expanding that and deepening that. But then you also have just the way the content is manifested in the game. Where there's so much lore that governs, how Terminus was created, what Terminus is. I mean, just go back and listen to the lore roundtable that Justin did recently. It's so deep, it's so vast, and there's a lot of opportunity we have, even in smaller form, content updates, expansions, things like that, to to start to unpack more of that as well. And that's a big part of the goal post-launch, is to continue to bring the player base deeper and deeper and deeper into understanding really how vast of a story they've been placed into. And that's why when we talk about things like heavy narrative, or hairy narrative, as I said last night, that when we talk about things like that, it's so important that we don't imbue it too heavily, too strongly into the player experience, because we want these things to be, we don't want you to feel like you're the hero of a story, but we want you very much to feel like, kind of like we do, in some ways in real life, that there is a greater narrative going on all around us that we are a piece of and a part of. And the more glimpses we can give players into that, the more and more and more connected and invested in the future lean of Terminus and everything that's happening, they're going to become, even though they're not being directly, led around by that narrative.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, so we've talked about how we would be starting with the shakeout in 2 classes, and that more classes will be added over time, with the final outcome of testing the progression up to rating. At what cadence do we estimate the rollout of the classes to be?
I don't want to commit to that, but it does take time. We could probably tell, Chris, once we have a class design, which we do, how long was that implementation? It's about a week, right? But that's not including test. That's not including testing, and then you have to do all the tuning and all of that stuff. So,
with the revamp of the ability system, when we're able to fully dedicate our focus to a class implementation, it takes about a week to a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks if we're talking about one of the more complex, sophisticated, mechanics that govern a class. Something like when we were mentioning the rogue last time, and how the stealth system really needed to be developed. That's an entire system that a class depends on, or something like a summoner with their pets, and the pet system that has to be developed. Those we could see take a little bit longer, but on the whole, we're looking about a week to week and a half of implementation, and then there is also that same amount of time frame for testing and making sure that everything's working properly. But it's a pretty quick turnaround when you think about it.
Yeah, and Derp, you mentioned something too. That's what we're here for. We'll test, and I would love that to be the case. But when we're talking about internal testing, it's just quite different, because what it is literally sitting down in a session, testers finding something, saying, okay, this doesn't work, so dev updating it live right then and there. You can't really do that en masse. Kind of has to be done in-house.
That kind of testing we do in-house is to get it ready for you guys, to get rid of the other bugs too. So these are the major flaws that would drive you guys nuts, that it's just impossible to get live feedback on. All right, so, and as we get further into PA5, can we expect that the sessions might become longer and or semi-permanent?
Absolutely. Let's be very careful about using that permanent word, though. But yeah, that is the plan. As PA5 progresses, we want to extend those periods longer and longer. I'll be honest with you here. One of the biggest problems with long sessions is that, for the most part, those sessions have to be manned, and as you know, we're a small staff, so it's very difficult to do stuff like 24-hour sessions. But we were talking about, what would it look like if we just put it up for 24 hours and then just say, there's not going to be any CS at all, and if the server crashes, it's down, until somebody gets into the office, because we can't possibly have everybody working 24 hours a day for very long. We just can't do it.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so moving on, we're about halfway through the questions, and we've got about 15 minutes left, so we'll see how we go. I'm happy to run over if you guys are. It'll just depend on you two. So I noticed an additional character slot is listed as a perk for the $100 pledges and higher, but not the 50. This seems to imply the character slots have a higher than normal value in Pantheon compared to most. Can you walk us through the thought process behind why you would think this particular perk should resonate with folks who might be interested in pledging to Pantheon?
That was one of the early perks. I think that might even date back to the Kickstarter days. And we were just, I'll be honest, there wasn't, I don't want to say there was no thought given to it, but when we were trying to raise money for the Kickstarter, we were looking at models that had worked in the past for other games. So I think that was one of those things that got added then, and we just kept it. Oh, wow. Somebody's posting the Robin Dan show.
Wow, nice.
Wow. That's, yeah. There's Salim. Is that Corey on there too? There's me.
Yeah, Brad.
Crazy, yeah. Yeah, Brad.
Nice, Tech Ninja.
Yeah, that was a good drop.
All right, so I'm dying to know the average coffee consumption per day for the dev team and others. I'm actually scared to
it's
release mine, but yeah.
For me, it's 0. I don't drink anything caffeinated. Makes me jittery.
Well.
I know.
Savage.
I know. Yeah, I'm gonna hold my nose on high and no coffee.
So I drink. I don't really drink coffee, but I drink. My wife gets these like organic caffeinated things. We'll just leave it at that. But I also have 3 children, and so there's something about waking up at 6:30 to 7:38 in the morning with getting jumped on and pulled on, and it kind of gets you up and moving, and they keep me going pretty well. But a lot of it is just passion too. I mean, that's such a silly thing to say, but I mean, really, like when you've been blessed to be able to be part of pushing something that you believe in, that you're incredibly excited about, further and further along, and you see that harbor, you see that goal, you see that finish line. I mean, that is, there's days when we're absolutely exhausted. But it's always, a new morning with fresh energy and ready to hit it. So it's very fun, nice. Very fun team and project to be part of.
Good stuff, man. I've got a balance of both of that. Like I'm a personal trainer, obviously by trade as well, run my own business, and there are good effects for caffeine to have on the body with lifting and things like that. So I have about 3 to 4 a day. I love it as well, just the taste, but I can go without it. Like it's not one of those things that I'm hooked on. I love what I do, both for the game company and for my personal training business, and both of those get me up out of bed without any hassle whatsoever. Very, very early for the personal training, about 5 a.m. But yeah, coffee just tastes great and gives you that extra.
I love the taste and the smell. So if I absolutely need to have one, I'll have a decaf. But it's just not part of my routine.
Yeah, nice. All right. So what are some of our favorite snacks while brainstorming?
Tears.
Salty tears.
I don't know.
I don't really snack at the. You wouldn't think it to look at me, but I don't really snack when I'm working. It's weird. I drink a lot of water though.
That's good.
I'm not constantly drinking water.
It's funny. I've got a big mug of coffee sitting next to me, and like the mug size, you guys would probably laugh at. It's ridiculously huge. But that's my snack. Just feed on coffee.
Yeah, the RX bar. Ronak just posted that. Those are great. Those are really good. They're really tasty, and they're decent for you. Lots of trail mix. That's really easy to eat while you're working, and lots of water for sure.
Can I tell the trail mix story, Chris?
I like the water.
Is that okay to tell? I don't want to.
Of course, yeah, that's fine.
So GDC 2016, we went to GDC, me, Chris, Brad, Corey. I think that was it, wasn't it? And that's pretty much all Chris ate was trail mix. He's like, no, I'm fine with trail mix. It's like, you guys want to go out? Yeah, let's go out. And then Chris like, nah, I'll just have some trail mix. It's like, so we made sure he was stocked up on trail mix.
Real, it's a thing. It's just, I just like not having to worry about food. I don't want to have to worry about like how something I eat's going to affect my stomach, or if it's going to, it's trail mix. Just, I know what it is. I know what it is.
Fat and protein.
Yep.
That's it. I like your shout out to water too. People should drink more water. All right. So, do you listen to music while you create art assets and world building? This is more directed to Joppa.
Oh, good grief, yes. And I think most of the team members who do that kind of stuff do. Oh yeah, I mean, big time.
Nice. What are some of your favorite features of Unity?
My favorite features of Unity are either the tools that our programmers have made to work with Unity and in Unity. It's amazing. Can't wait till we're at the point of development where we can kind of expose, more. I mean, we've talked about it a little bit, for one of our programmers, Rob, a senior programmer, Robert Crane. He has made the most incredible, everything that you guys are going to see when you're experiencing the NPC dialogue, interactions, perception system, all that stuff. It's fueled by this tool called Odin that he has nicknamed Odin. We've got another tool called Zeus and a few other that he's gone with that kind of Asgardian theme, but it's incredible. All that it can do, the depth, that's the kind of stuff I love working with. And then, the ability tool that Kyle's made, all the animation infrastructure that we use inside of Unity. But I mean, the Unity specific, it's just a very, very easy tool. It's a very easy game engine to get familiarized with and get somewhat proficient in quickly. Unity does not, provide in and of itself all of the tools necessary for making an MMO, and certainly the kind of tools necessary to really go to that, nth degree of, be it the networking or, all of the proprietary tools, like I've mentioned. But it's as a general kind of game engine and a general starting point, it's just a very, very intuitive and relatively easy tool to pick up and get rolling in.
Yeah, nice. So we've already touched on PA5 ad hoc schedule and stuff. So we move on to Black Rose Pledge. Has unique in-game cosmetic items that other pledges don't have. For those of us that have already pledged above that pledge level, is there any way to still get those items?
Yes. So the new website is coming out on Sunday. I urge you to take a look at the pledges. The pledges are more or less, well, they're not more or less the same. They are the same, but it clarifies there. So the Black Rose Pledge, all of those ones that have those cosmetic items, you get a choice of which cosmetic item. So yes, the Black Rose will have the choice of the other ones as well.
Nice. All right, faction questions. What are the latest decisions related to factions and how intertwined they are around the world? Will most factions have relationships with other factions to whom they are KOS, while to others they are friendly, or do we have a more narrow approach whereby most factions have just one other relationship?
No, there'll definitely be a pretty nice depth of faction tie, where any given NPC, for example, could have multiple factions they're aligned with, multiple factions they're at war with, and how you interact with that NPC could alter your faction on many different fronts. But everything we've kind of said about faction still remains true. The only additional insight would be, we really want players to be able to kind of, again, as part of that player agency, if you're running around Avelia, for example, and let's say, like I did on the streams, Avelia Watchguard takes me out as a Dire Lord. If I come back at level 30 and I want to destroy that thing, I can feel free to do that, even though it's technically a townsperson. But even beyond that, if you were a paladin and you decided, what, I'm allied with Stormwind, but for whatever reason, I want to tank that faction and start focusing on something else, you can actually declare war on a faction and essentially make yourself able to, in doing so, attack those things. So we had to work out a few of the technical aspects with what counts as an attackable NPC, because we have the offensive and defensive target paradigm. And so when you target a friendly NPC, then that technically should be a defensive target. You should be able to target that NPC since it's not hostile towards you, because you're going to be interacting with them, in terms of vendors, and because our right click is part of what we use to initiate auto attack in combat. If you go up to a friendly NPC and you want to talk to them or want to interact with them and you right click and they were treated as an offensive target, then you can see kind of, some of what we were running into there. And so what we've decided to do is that if you are of a, not a friendly or a neutral or above with an NPC, you're not going to see like the little sword icon when you hover over them. You're not going to initiate combat when you right click on them. But you would be able to, in encountering them in the game world, you would be able to see that faction in the user interface, and you could choose to declare war on that faction if you wanted to be hostile towards them. So it was a compromise, or kind of a solution, I guess, that we came to with giving players that agency, but still allowing you to be able to interact with non-hostile NPCs in the ways you might need to, but then also choose to declare war.
Awesome, man. And following up to that too, should all factions, regardless of their starting point, be something you can both ruin, become KOS, or repair, building up from KOS to at least indifferent, based upon your actions? By this they mean if I start off KOS to goblins, they should have some faction that I can kill to eventually make the goblins like me. The enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Yeah, not going to go too deep into that one, because on some level that does become not a case-by-case basis thing, but there would be some situations where if you literally were able to align yourself with anything, then there are ways that could be used to trivialize certain content. And but I will say that it's a really interesting concept to consider in the PvP sense. When we think about like PvP servers, rule sets, that could be one of those places where we might see maybe a difference in something like that, where certain NPCs that are flagged as like you can't actually alter or affect your reputation with these NPCs on a standard PvE server for those reasons of balance and content integrity, things like that. We could say, but on a PvP server, then potentially we would remove those constraints, and then it becomes much more, again, of that kind of open world playground PvP where you really are able to alter strongholds and create actual strongholds out of the native like game content, because you've done the work to actually align yourself with certain NPC groups. Things like that could be extremely interesting to explore, but that's kind of the general idea of where we stand right now.
Awesome, mate. Good stuff. Is the dev team planning on having special holiday events happening throughout the year?
Hope to.
Great answer. When will the next Pantheon be? It's been a long time since TwitchCon at PAX East. Yeah. Where are the buttons?
Well, once COVID goes away, then we can start thinking about stuff like that. Right now, unfortunately, it's just not something we can do.
Yeah, exactly.
But you'll know as soon as we do.
We'll look for one that's good for us to show off when we've got enough to show off and we're happy with, location, all that stuff, and then we'll announce it to you guys. But yeah, with COVID and all that, it's no real.
It will no doubt be tied with some sort of convention, I'm sure. But you'll know well ahead of time when we're going to our next convention.
Okay, next question. To keep it very brief, it's basically updating. Do we have a play nice policy, and player policing, reputation, all that kind of stuff? Do we have an update on that, or do we have a play nice policy that we're going to have put in place?
I don't want to open up that conversation again right now. It is something that's very important. Obviously we want people to be able to enjoy their time in game, but if you're looking for an easy answer, I don't have one for you just now.
Oh, and look, and other games try and get it wrong, and some get it right in certain places. It's very, very difficult. It comes down to human behavior. If you're going to be a dick, you probably get treated like one. It's going to hurt someone's feelings, and that person can't expect us to always jump in to, ban someone or interact or kind of save them. Everyone's going to interpret situations differently, so we will have something basic in place to stop harassment and all that kind of nasty stuff from happening. But an accidental train or something like that, there isn't going to be an official kind of response to, unless we can see evidence of it being intentional.
Just think of it from a logistics point of view. In order to have that kind of coverage for a game as big as ours, with as many players playing it, I can't even imagine the cost of CS. Like, it would be ridiculous. You'd have to have hundreds of staff.
Yeah,
I think for sake of expectation setting too, this is something. Yes, it's a major topic, but expect when we get into testing that, you might in pre-alpha 5 proper, you might log in for one session and see that we've gone from most damage dealt as a kill credit to now first attack, because this is something that we really need to thoroughly test in as many different situations as we can, and tracking very, very carefully the kind of impact that it has. And so that's how open we are to the need to really test this thoroughly. So don't be surprised to see some alterations like that as we go through testing, so we can get those different data points.
Find out what works, find out what doesn't.
That's it. And once that's all done, I'm going to volunteer 24/7 to run around and answer all those complaints in game. And if 2 people have a complaint, I'm going to transfer you both to a PvP account and a server, and you guys can I'll watch you duke it out.
I had an experience doing it for a very, very brief time on Project 99. I was talking to Rogan way back when Project 99 was new, and him and Nilbog said, "Well, why don't you GM for a little bit?" And I said, "Sure, why not?" So I went in there, and I couldn't believe just the amount of tickets that came in, and that was a really at that point that was a really small community. Like, we're talking maybe a few hundred people, and it was impossible to keep up with. So I can't imagine. We have to have in-game systems. Like, that's the only way that you can do it, and you don't want it to be like Chris said, you don't want it to be so overbearing. You got to let people be themselves as well. So we'll try a few things.
Exactly. Okay, so moving on to a fun question. Talking of beans, what's your favorite flavor of bean? Barbecue, chili, pinto, black, pork and beans, etc.
Edamame.
Oh, edamame beans are nice. I'm going to say pinto, only because there's this place called Mad Mex in Australia. It's like a chain of Mexican kind of wraps and stuff like that. And yeah, they're amazing, and they have pinto beans in them, rice, chorizo, chicken. It's yum. It's not Australian Mexican, it's Mexican, but it's in Australia. It's not our version of it. But yeah, they're delicious. What about you, Chris?
I don't actually like beans all that much. Not the kind.
Yeah, you hand them
Jelly
out.
beans.
You hand them out so freely, mate.
Well, that's
why he's trying to get rid of them. He's like, beans. I don't want these.
You have them. All right. So, when will we be seeing more about the superior race, the Scar?
Ben, I'm just going to interrupt you for a second. Sure. I don't mind keep on going. I just want to check in with you guys if you're still good on time.
We're 11:02, and we're 2 minutes past, and we got 2 more questions.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. I'm having fun, so let's keep going.
And then we got a 5-10 minute Q&A at the end. If there's any questions, then we can wrap it up.
All right. Sorry, I interrupted you. What was the question?
No worries, man. So when will we be hearing more about the superior race?
So it's only going to take 10 or 15 minutes?
The Scar.
Sorry. That's the last time I interrupt you. What was that?
All right, so when we'll be seeing more about the superior race, the Scar?
The Scar. What do you mean? Like, when are we going to hear more of it? I thought we have quite a bit of information out on there. I just did there's a whole page on it on the website that we just did.
Not enough, man.
We want to know when we're going to start running around.
In game.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's not something we're going to answer just yet, because there's a couple of pieces of that pipeline that we need to work out. We've got the current selection of races that are going to be available during Pre-Alpha 5. We still have a few, I think 3 of them, that need to be that still have a couple of pieces that they need left. You've seen all the races, you've seen them kind of fully modeled, textured, posed, but there's a couple of just pieces of that loop that we need to finish before we can get them in and playable, but they won't be long.
Awesome. Anything we can share regarding racial actives?
That's a whole show.
Yeah, that's huge.
That was let's sneak that in at the end. Well, do you have 2 hours? No, we are planning on doing racial actives, doing a whole show on it at some point. So I don't know if we can go too far into it right now.
Yeah, cool. So we'll save that for when they can get more info. But any insight we can give in any insight into what feedback you're looking for specifically coming into PA5 Shakedown? So what do we want from them? What are we expecting from them when we go into Shakedown?
Just from a tech point of view, we had to talk about this today. We really want to see how things are working in terms of server load. So if you can get in, please do. If you have the means to do it. I know that the schedule doesn't work for everybody, but that would be a huge help technically. And then Chris has a plethora of things that he wants to get in terms of content and experience. So
yeah, for sure. I mean, that's a huge one. In addition to that, it's going to be what are all of the we have our internal team, we can get into the game, but when you get 100, 125, 100 and however many players in one zone, what are the kind of things that happen that we even with bots we can't necessarily replicate. So that's another big one, and that honestly that's really a lot of what the shakeout is about, is just making sure that everything is stable. That's why we're calling it the shakeout, because it really is just you're turning something on for the first time in a while to this kind of stress and load. But as far as like content and gameplay and just the player experience goes, I mean, it's kind of for the shakeout, it's pretty open. It's not a whole lot of time, and so I don't know how effective it would be to be super directive in terms of like we're not going to be able to go super deep into anything, and it's also just a great chance to like just get familiar with the world and kind of have those few kind of that kind of wide-eyed moments of everyone coming in, spreading out. And now that's not to say there's not going to be completely directionless, because there are some pretty specific things in terms of like there's some climbing content that I'm not going to say anything about it yet. I want it to be a little bit of a surprise, but got some cool stuff to test that system, and not just testing climbing, but testing NPC pathing, and what are all the crazy things that you guys are able to figure out that you can do or NPCs can do. Obviously, I'm expecting players to spend a lot of time with their abilities, trying to get as much experience as they can, as quickly as they can, as many abilities as they can, grouping up, and then just taking note of the time that we have between the shakeout and PA5 proper is going to be not only to get everything ready for PA5 proper that we want to have up and available, but it's also to take all of the feedback from shakeout into account, the technical side, content, gameplay side, bugs, and do our best to address it all before we open the doors.
Yeah, perfect, man. Will we be including any voice acting in the game, such as sound bites, NPCs bark at you when you walk by or interact with them, or voice tutorials, raid encounters?
Not currently planned. That sort of stuff is shockingly expensive, but so that's why. But who knows? Maybe.
I thought you were doing all that, Ben.
Oh, if you want to see her the same way, I don't want to speak disparagingly, but think of like Skyrim, and you go to the towns and it's all the same dude. It's like, And then the other end of it, I remember when Star Wars: The Old Republic announced that they were doing full voiceovers, and everybody was like, "Oh my God, what kind of budget do you have?"
Yeah. I mean, I'll volunteer if you don't mind an Aussie accent saying, "I've got a quest for you, mate," every NPC you talk to.
Yeah, and spoiler alert, we do not have the money that LucasArts does, or did.
Last question. We may or may not be able to answer it, but a general idea. What kind of gap between PA5 Shakeout and PA5 proper will there be? Weeks? A month? Months?
We will let you know.
All right. So that's it. Wrapped up for all the questions. If anyone, we're 10 minutes over. We can probably go for another 5 or 10, depending on the guys. If you want to tag me so I can see it, I'll read it out for the guys to answer. And yeah, we'll do a quick open Q&A now. Just try to keep it short if you can, guys. No big, long questions or anything that's going to...
I'm just going to jump in on one of these. They're still talking about crowdsource, but Techno just said crowdsource voiceovers. Technically possible, but still, it's still expensive because you still have to get the recording done, and then you still have to do the edits, and you still have to do the implementation. So it's not just about getting the talent; it's about all the tech that goes into it as well. So it gets pricey.
Who's the best player in Pantheon dev team? That'd be me. Quickly moving on. Any plans for a guide program like EQ had? Yes, we do have plans for a guide program, but that's to be revealed a bit later on. Based on prior comment of the time to build out a class, getting them into PA5, does that mean classes are being completely refactored?
I wouldn't say the classes are being refactored, but the combat certainly has been.
Well, the fundamental system that drives the abilities, the conditional logic of the game, the entity handling system, the status system, the animations, and what drives the synchronization of data and audio and visual and animation layer. That could all be summed up to say, like, are the class designs being refactored? No. Have they evolved? To a degree, but what we released about the classes and what their roles, their ability arsenal, those things absolutely intact. It just means that now we can actually do all of the amazing things that the classes are designed to do. Not only the more complicated and complex abilities, especially the ones that involve entity movement, things like everything from like charges and things like that, which are pretty standard fare, but then moving into more complicated things like the Ranger's Veilhawks, where you can lift yourself up off the ground and move to a different location, or the Druid's Vine Roving Bridge, or the length of rope. Those things, we needed an ability system that could actually support all of that for it to be performant, and network wise, that it could be something that was synchronized across the network, so that all that stuff is showing up in the right time in the right place for everybody involved on the screen. So I mean, it's a massive undertaking. That's what's so exciting, is that we've done that. We've gone through that process, and so all that's really going to be felt by the testers is that everything works. Like I go to the program, it works. It does what it says it's going to do. It has. I'm understanding it. That PA 1 through 4 was very, very, very early and very primitive in a lot of ways in terms of the ability system and what classes could do, what NPCs could do. You're going to see a night and day in PA 5.
All right, perfect. So let's do a couple of quick fires. Races available for PA 5 proper.
We're gonna have humans. We're gonna have halflings, elves, ogres, and dwarves for sure, and I'll leave it at that. Even though there could be at least one additional added to that list.
Okay, perfect. For PvP servers, will there be anything different from a standard server other than the ability to PvP?
Too early.
Yeah, and that's something we'll work on with you guys too, over testing and stuff when we do PvP. Could be different rule set servers, could be a lot of things, so we'll work with you guys and see what's within our means and best for the server stability, and it's going to make it fun. Any consideration to doing a partnership with VR and WETA for model sales. I hesitate to read this question. What's WETA? I've got no idea what that is. So moving on. Any beans you can share about the general aspect of the mastery system?
Oh, general mastery. So like the character mastery that goes beyond like the ability mastery. Is that what you mean?
I think so, yeah. Separate from the ability focused aspect.
Gotcha.
The general aspect was referenced briefly.
Yeah, not a whole lot of detail we want to share on that just yet, other than you can think of it very much as that kind of incremental, holistic character improvement. And so you could see everything from incremental improvements to your base run speed, your base jump height, your base, weight carrying capacity. You could see, improvements in things like being able to, increase the attribute cap, for example, for your character, or but I mean, and you can just continue to fill out that list of the very incremental general character improvement that comes, and the key there being that you will be needing to make a decision as you get mastery points where you want to invest those. Are you investing those in the general mastery system that's more holistic, or are you investing them in your abilities? And what order, what sequence are you doing that as you level up and as you gain those abilities? So hoping it's going to be a very interesting and engaging part of class development, character development for the players. Excited for a lot of feedback on that.
Nice, man. This is a great question. Sorry, Ben.
Okay. No, I was going to refer back to one that. Go ahead, ask that. I'm going to answer another one later.
Okay. Can you climb away from a mob? And if so, can a ranged attack knock you off the climb?
Yes and yes.
Yeah, that's awesome. What's the max level you can technically reach in Shakeout? Is XP accelerated, and will it differ from PA5 proper?
I guess you could reach 50 if you could find enough. I don't see you doing that in 6 hours, though.
Yeah, there's no cap. There's no cap on how high level you can get in the Shakeout. Experience will be accelerated, though. And it will not differ from PA5, except for any potential experience gain changes, like experience rate changes we might make as part of the testing process in PA5.
Can you climb everything? Houses, other mobs, players?
That's
a funny picture in my head then.
What's funny about that is that we were doing a demo the other last week or whenever it was, and we had popped into a zone, and the demo guys were logging on, and literally, like, one of them, as they were logging in, one of them was standing on top of the other. It looked like he was giving him like riding on his shoulders. So that scene was immediately just kind of flashed in my mind.
That's max climbing skill. Yes, you can climb everything, but there will be exceptions to that where it just makes sense. If we're in there and we find that a player's gotten stuck in some kind of piece of geometry because they've been climbing on the thrown fast city walls and they've ended up stuck inside the wall, can't get out. Those are situations we have to look at and say, okay, is this a climbing issue, or is this a mesh issue with the 3D object? But then remember too, there's going to be differences in surfaces, in the climbing surfaces too. So there will be some things that you cannot climb because you're not skilled enough to climb. You don't have the right equipment to climb it. Things like that. But yes, you should go in with the expectation that the only exception to that would be if you're talking about like a tree that's a very skinny tree. Part of the evolution of the climbing system a little bit further down the line in development will be to incorporate things like poles, or especially once we get to the rogue, which the rogue is the next class that we're probably going to be bringing online during PA5, getting in the rope climbing and things like that will have to, work out the climbing aspects of being able to climb poles, ropes, really thin, tree trunks, things like that. So for now, you might run into a skinny tree and find you can't climb it. But as long as it's a tree that's about as thick as you are, wide as you are, and pretty much anything else you can think of, unless we have it turned off for a specific reason temporarily.
So
Nice.
I'm going to jump in here, and Kilsin didn't ask this question, and for good reason. Typically, the staff knows that we don't typically answer these questions, but I'm going to do it tonight. So Pantheon Plus in the forums had asked, he says, I know it's very difficult to speak financials due to legalities and discussions that are to be kept private. Can you give the community any update on how VR is doing with funding overall? Anyway, that sort of question. So yeah, obviously there's a lot we can't talk about because there is all sorts of privacy around it. So what I can say though is, it's no small secret that Pantheon is primarily crowdfunded. We say that on every stream and pretty much anytime we're interviewed, and that is very much true. So our primary source of funding is through crowdfunding. Now, we do have angel investors, and when those angel investors come in, we can, we use those funds to reach our goals quicker. And while I'm not going to say just yet, but in the next week or two, maybe 3, we are going to be making another announcement. It's not a huge announcement, so just keep your expectations for that. But we do have a little bit of an announcement to make on that. Thirdly, or fourthly, or whatever number it's at, are we still talking to publishers and other partners? The answer to that is yes, we are very actively. We have quite a few discussions going on right now. That's about all I can say about that. So hopefully that answers a lot of your questions. It's about the extent that I can go on it anyway without breaching any confidentiality.
Yeah, nice, man. And just to add on that, like the negotiations that are ongoing, we're actively picking and choosing. We don't just jump into bed with anybody. We want to make sure it's a perfect fit for us, for our game, for our community.
That's a really good point, and it's something that isn't really well known. But our biz dev team is fantastic because they really want to, like all of us, want to conserve the culture here at Visionary Realms. We don't want to just sell. And sometimes there might be opportunities to make a quick buck. And if it doesn't fit, we don't go for it. Again, I can't give any examples due to confidentiality, but that sort of thing does happen. When we do find a partner, it's for the right reasons. It's the right partner who wants the same goals, who's aligned with where we want to go with the game, with what with the vision and everything else. So,
yeah, that's
very well sliced bean, Mr. Dean.
Well, thank you.
Okay, let's make this the last question. Will there be an online bug report that gives exact location for issues we find in the world? I'm not sure if ours does that. We do have a screenshot built into our bug reporting, but I'm not sure if it gives exact location or coordinates. I did remember here, talking to one of the devs about that, but I'm not too sure if you guys have any info on it.
Sorry, I was getting pinged on Skype here. What was that?
Will there be an online bug report that gives exact location for issues we find in the world?
Oh, an exact location? I don't believe so. No.
Okay.
No.
So there are coordinates which you can add and find yourself with /commands and stuff. Plus, you can take a screenshot with the tool we have. But yeah, I'm sure it would be something we could look at adding. I'm just not sure if it's in at the moment, but
it won't be for PA5 Shakeout.
Yeah, no. All right, perfect. Thank you very much, guys. That was amazing. And to our special Wild Joppa appearance, really appreciate it, man. Thank you. And always a pleasure to have you on, Ben. Thank you, mate.
Always a pleasure. I haven't done one of these in a long time. It was great to come back. You never ask me on your show anymore, Kilsin. It's like I wronged you.
Not at all, man. but yeah, we've it was a great show today. Thank you very much to you guys for coming on. Thank you to everyone who stayed and listened. It was much appreciated. We hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will be back next month with someone different. Probably, maybe we're trying to work in some CS with Artois to see about
Artois.
About doing some CS and pledges and stuff like that, because there seems to be a little bit of confusion around that, so we might jump into that next time. But until then,
look, it looks like I'm getting a new nickname too, Ben Wonder Woman Dean. I can live with that. I will embrace it gladly.
Nice, man. Nothing wrong with Wonder
Congrats on
Woman.
the Dean.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody.
And I'll
It's a lot of fun.
A lot of fun.
I'll post this up online soon. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.